It's that time once again for another episode of 40K Fanatics Podcast. I am Shane, riding solo today. Now don't turn off. Okay, you're back. Don't turn off. Everything's going to be fine. I'm not going to castigate you all about what I think about your standard of model painting or anything like that. Today is a little bit of a discussion topic. We're going to talk about the way that tabletop war games have changed and what I think is the reason for that. But first, as always, first part of the show, we're going to open up the Vox channel and read some of your comments. Now, last week we read quite a few YouTube comments off of the Horus Heresy Legacies is totally Warhammer Legends, but we did not get to the Spotify comments. Now, the absolute best place to listen is over on Spotify. We would like you to subscribe there and to rate us 5 stars. It helps a lot. The theory is if we put all the eggs into the one Spotify basket, they may allow us to sell into the AM t-shirts or whatever it is, or perhaps Paris Hilton's obnoxious podcast. I'm sure you guys have heard the ads. I know that I have. God help me. But this one comes from that pod now 2 weeks ago. From frequent contributor Dave and Company, he says, with regard to the Legacies and Legends conversation, he says, it's tough because the models are expensive. Cost money to buy, cost time to paint, cost money and space for storage and transport, etc. So, spending all that time and money to then be told now you can't use your models is in a competitive game is more than just feels bad. It really, really sucks. All that time and money wasted. Of course, he continues, if you have friends that are willing to play the old stuff, then that's fine, but that's not usually what happens. And he's right about that. It seems, for whatever reason, and I'll get into this in the main topic today, that the sort of resting point of a lot of our tabletop war games, especially ones kind of it's I don't think it's ironic, but almost paradoxically, the games that get more touches to the rules, to the balance, seem to be the ones whose resting point tends to be on whatever that most competitive version of it is told to us to be. But we continue with more comments. This comes from last week's pod on where we kind of did something new, the most interesting Warhammer 40K units, Volume 1. Get down in the comments and let me know what you guys thought of this format, where we focused a little bit on the lore and on just sort of poking around the 40K universe, model range, etc., talking about stuff that we maybe don't have or would like to have or have played and would like to see, that kind of thing. Dave and Company again says, too many players ignore lore stuff just to write the meta list, so they miss all the goodies. He continues, I'll just suggest that you go to the old Eye of Terra Codex for some really great blurbs. Shane, as a Chaos player, you'll really appreciate the brief sidebar about plague zombies. I'll never call them poxwalkers, damn it, he says parenthetically. And big mutants. It's a riot. Austin would enjoy the old Armageddon Codex, not the new one. The guard blurbs are great, Yarrick, but there's also the gem of Orcademies. Haha. And I wonder if Austin knows about that. We're definitely going to give Austin the opportunity for rebuttal on next week's pod. And if you're wondering where he is, he's got a lot of big stuff going on. He's buying his first house, and they close as of recording tomorrow on it. So I asked him the other day, when do we pack the truck? And he said his fiance's brothers might pack the truck, to which I said, oh, that's wonderful. I don't actually want to help anybody move, but I will if I have to. So it looks like we're all going to get off the hook, and he's going to finally be able to have a dedicated space for some painting, for some hobbying, possibly for some playing. I'm going to stay on him. I think I could sneak a gaming sized table into his spot before anybody notices. But we'll see. One more comment to read. This comes from the same pod. Quiet Night says, Kill Team on Thursday must have been, all caps, awesome. And Quiet Night, that brings us right into the Bits Box. I'm going to do the sound effects to open the bits box, and I hope they're fine. The bits box is a part of the show where we talk about what we've done in the miniature hobby this week. So, going off of that comment, I did in fact play Kill Team 3rd Edition. It was my first game of Kill Team 3rd Edition. We played the, I guess, 23-24, whatever they call it, matched play deck. I think they might call it Critical Ops or something like that, or Approved Ops, some sort of. It's the way you play Kill Team at tournaments, folks. And it was fine. I shall expound a little bit on my thoughts of Kill Team 3rd Edition because I don't think that anybody would stand for an entire pod about it. But we played it, and it was my Legionaries kill team, which is the regular sort of Black Legion kill team, versus the homie Steve's new. They're the Night Lords kill team. I forget exactly what they're called. Dreadclaw, perhaps, or Nemesis Claw, something like that. Anyway, so it was 6 Chaos Space Marines versus 6 Chaos Space Marines playing out of the deck, selecting missions out of the deck. There's a new deck coming out, so I've been so late to this new 3rd edition of Kill Team that now that deck is almost, is soon to be defunct when the next box comes out, the one with the Necron into the dark terrain or what have you. But so we played the old one, and it was good. It was very much familiar if you had played Kill Team 2nd Edition. The line of sight and the cover mechanics were just as clunky as they had been before, which has always been a bit of a bugaboo with Kill Team. It's it works on this whole idea of tracing a cone, you call them cover lines, from any point on the attacking model's base to all points of the defending model's base. And then there's this cookie cutter concept where there's a 1-inch circle around your model, and that, if you follow me, will cut a hole in any terrain around that model, so that terrain doesn't count. That way, this entire idea, this entire concept of a cover line intersecting a piece of various types of terrain can work in one direction, but doesn't stop the opposite from happening, right? Because otherwise, if you brought a guy right up to the edge of a barricade, then he, air quotes, wouldn't be able to see beyond it, except he's got this 1-inch cutout that he makes, in theory. It's all very abstract, but it's abstract while being super cut and dried on what's what and where's where. So it works good once you get your head around it. It is a somewhat Herculean task for someone to teach it to someone, and I've been the guy to teach it most of the time, and it's not fun. I mean, just as I've explained it to you, I feel I can feel the confusion seeping off of your every body part, and I don't blame you. It's best if you've got a piece of terrain and 2 models so you can show it. There are many YouTube videos about it. Go check it out. The other part of the Kill Team experience in 3rd edition is they've put everything on the cards of the models, which is pretty familiar. They've even given you some reference cards for things like your faction rule and stuff like that. Now, I didn't have any of those. I used the Kill Team app, which needs a lot of work. It has no capacity for organization. You can sort of open up your team, and then all it is a PDF reader. And you can get by, but you then need a notepad for who's got what and where, etc. So, then you go to play the game, and it's 2 things. It is, first, the wordiest rule set that I have ever come across. And it was wordy in the 2nd edition too, and that has not changed. The changes that they've made from 2nd to 3rd is it's still just paragraphs of text on every single data card for every single guy, for every single ability. If a guy's got 2 abilities, you've got 2 whole paragraphs to read. And they are written in like a legal document with very specific wording, commas, etc., that have to be adhered to, or it's just gobbledygook. And even if you do read through it and catch everything and do it, it still reads as gobbledygook, and that's terrible. The other thing that it is, because you can kind of get past that after a little while, you know your team at least, so you don't have to read the whole paragraph every single time. You sort of make a refresher. Um, I found that through the 4 turns of the game, that by the time we got to about the 3rd turn, we both kind of knew what each other's abilities were. And so it it kind of ran a little smoother. I think if you played a lot, Kill Team's a game where you kind of need to know your team and your opponents. If you sort of knew the whole catalog, similar to how a lot of guys like to play 40K, where they want the rules for everybody and they kind of have an idea of how everything works, then Kill Team would play really fast and really good. One gripe I've got about it is it's very, very, very killy. So we're playing Space Marine versus Space Marine, and if you shoot at or fight a Space Marine versus a Space Marine, whoever initiated the fight usually kills the other guy, and whoever hits the shot is gonna kill the other guy. So, the sort of way that Kill Team 3rd Edition plays, the same way that Kill Team 2nd Edition plays. Turn 1, everybody just moves into position. Turn 2, everybody dies, and turn 3 and 4, you sort of just try to get as many points as you can with whatever's left. Now, I feel like I don't understand why they made it so killy when they were making it from the ground up again with the new 3rd edition. Everything got rewritten, everything got rebalanced. Almost all of the concepts got another look, and yet it's all set up like if you're anything other than Space Marines playing into Space Marines, it's a David and Goliath situation. And then the Space Marines kill each other instantly too. And I feel like maybe they shouldn't be so deadly to one another, and then that'd give non-Space Marines a bit of a chance, but I haven't played any games. This is coming from one game. However, I played quite a few games of 2nd edition Kill Team, and it was similar. So, I don't understand why they chose to make everything quite so lethal. I think it might have been more fun if instead of things doing 7 damage with a total of 14 wounds, there was, the most damage that anything did was say 5. Then a Space Marine that is a melee monster could easily kill a guardsman in one fight action. But then against other Space Marines, they might be tied up for a long time, and that might be more interesting. But maybe not. Maybe they want it to be quick and painful, which it was. I managed to win just because I killed all his stuff, and you've got 3 things going on for scoring. You've got the mission rule. You've got a secondary that you choose based on your team archetype. That one I picked was what won me the game. Basically, I had to keep him out of my half of the board. That was not hard to do. And then you get to pick a 3rd one where you kill stuff or have stuff survive, etc. And I killed all his dudes, so there was plenty of scoring there as well. It's nice that there's a lot of different scoring. Some of that scoring opportunity is hidden information from your opponent, so when it happens, you reveal it, and then they know what you've been trying to do. So that's kind of neat. It's still a big gotcha game, just due to the way that the abilities are. You could not, at the beginning of the game, rattle off all the abilities and what they do to your opponent and then be able to retain any of that and still play the game. You sort of just have to. The big gotchas, you almost need to say, hey, just letting you know, if you move that there, I'm able to do XYZ. And I think if you don't play that way, it would be a really feel bad situation. But me and the homie Steve did play that way, so it was fun. Now, last thing on Kill Team, when I was playing it, I didn't love it. But the more that I've thought about it, the more I would like to play it again. Also, I think because the cover mechanic, because the rules are so, um, they're so, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very rigid in the way they function. I think it would make the narrative scenarios, the asymmetric scenarios from older books and things like that, would be a lot of fun. They were a lot of fun in second edition, the edition they came with, and I think they'd be a lot of fun just to port straight over to third edition. I don't see any reason why all that kind of stuff would not continue to function, because you still have a lot of the same type of actions on points, etc. Uh, and I think just because it's a good engine for playing out that simulation, if you will, it's a lot less of a narrative engine. It's more of a simulation engine, if you follow me. It's it's a system that doesn't really lend itself to any, yeah, this is probably how that works, or we're going to house rule this. It's not that kind of thing. It's much more similar to the way that Marvel Crisis Protocol or Star Wars Shatterpoint plays, where this is a game that's meant to be tight. It's meant to be competitive. It's meant to be a game, and in that you play it because you want to win. Um, why it is that those other two games are able to make all their abilities be a line or two, and Kill Team somehow manages to spend, you know, 250 words an ability. That I exaggerate a little, but it is a big old block of text more often than you'd like. I don't know, but I look forward to playing it again. Final thing in my bits box this week, I posted it in our Discord, which is totally free to join. Go and join our Discord. We've got a new member in there, and they're very lovely. But in the Bitsbox channel of the Discord, you can post your models for us to look at, comment on, and just generally gas you up. And you can see my Stormweaver on Unicorn for the High Elves of the Old World. She's just about done. I've got a little bit of basing to do, but I glued her to her steed, and I think it looks really cool. It's a lot of there are a lot of places in the paint job that I tried to stretch, that I tried to do new things. Some places where I tried to do things I've done before, but do them at a much higher level than before. So a lot of times when I talk about a stretch in painting, it's something you've never tried or that you want to try, and it's like your first attempt. But there's also something to, I'm starting to get a handle on it. I better keep doing it and try to refine skill XYZ. And so I used her for a lot of those opportunities, and I think that there was good stuff done. There was good stuff learned there. But that's my bits box. Once again, uh, go and join our Discord. It's totally free. Free's a good price. Free doesn't cost you anything. And post your stuff. Let us know what you think of ours. And I'm going to close this bits box. Here it goes. Boom. All right. In today's main topic, I have written down here today. This is how I pitched it. It's going to be a good discussion. I imagine, again, we'll get Austin's rebuttal when he's back next week to see what he thinks about some of these ideas. I put it down as kids today and how Warhammer grew up. Now, that's a little bit of a misnomer conceptually, because it's the kids today that have caused Warhammer not so much to grow up, but in a way, I think, to devolve into something different. I don't think that it is at a higher intellectual place due to this idea. And let me lay out the idea for you. Back in the before time, if someone wanted to play some games, let's talk about the 80s or even the 70s. You had things like Monopoly, Snakes and Ladders, sorry, Yahtzee, Scrabble, or you had sports, and sports are sports, all right? The game people and the sports people probably weren't doing too much of the same thing. And the game people never would have tried to say, hey, this Yahtzee, very similar to baseball. Wasn't going to happen. And then here comes, well, I'm compressing a lot of stuff, but at some point there became tabletop war games that then turned into tabletop RPGs, and then the tabletop war games continued to expand, and you got to a place where you had people running simulations of sorts, but mainly narrative scenarios of historical battles, and then they moved that into sci-fi. At the same time, you had people going off and doing tabletop RPGs, Dungeons and Dragons, and playing pretend, and having some sort of structure for that. And then the internet comes, and online gaming, and this is where I want to start. The sort of overarching theory of this idea here is tied to what Kill Team 3rd Edition is versus what, say, Warhammer the Old World is. Kill Team 3rd Edition is a game, a competitive game that assumes that both players desire to beat one another above all else. And that's a perfectly valid thing. That sort of mentality would not have worked so well, does not work so well in Warhammer the Old World. The game system itself is a little too easily cracked for that to be the guiding principle of the experience. Horus Heresy is not 40K for kind of the same reason, or at least that's the way they're pitching it for the new 3rd edition of Horus Heresy. Now, why is it that people seem to desire this balanced at all cost system in their 40K? And I think it is because of online gaming. Over the last few years, tabletop wargaming and Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop RPGs have had an explosion in popularity. And there are a lot of different reasons why that could be. But the reason that I'd like to pose to everyone is that if you have been on this earth since about the year 2000, you've had the better part of 20 years that more likely than not you have spent some amount of time off and on or constantly playing online computer games with strangers. And you have been possibly called the N-word by a child in another country while you're playing Call of Duty, or while you're playing Madden, or while you're playing 2K, or, somebody's been ganking you on World of Warcraft for years. You are in a dark room with your headset on, with Cheeto dust on your shirt, and that's been the experience. Now, obviously, there's great stuff there. There's tons of wonderful online communities. I'm a part of many, and it's good fun. But it's also got the other half, which is everybody's chasing the meta. You go to play Overwatch, and if you're not playing the optimal lineup, then people are going to yell at you in between matches that you're not playing the right character, or you're not playing that character right. And it's a lot of antagonistic, competitive juices, right? And I think people are a little bit tired of that. Because if you're 25, maybe you started playing online games when you were 7, and now, again, it's the better part of 20 years that the online gaming experience has not been something that you need to be a IT nerd to set up. It's just right there. It's on your PlayStation. It's ready to go. And it works good. And there's voice chat. And it's horrible at times because people don't want to be nice. And nobody just wants to play Call of Duty for fun. They want to pwn noobs. That's what they want to do. All right? And then somebody says, "Hey Frank, would you like to come over?" What, like to the house? Yeah, yeah. We're gonna have sodas and chips, and we're gonna play the new D&D. What the heck is the new D&D? You mean like the thing on YouTube? He's like, yes, we're gonna do that. Do I need to do? Well, what do I need to bring? Well, hardly anything. Bring your iPad. We'll hook you up with the sign-in code to D&D Beyond. And we'll just all work together against the dungeon master who is trying to take us on a little journey. Well, is he going to try to kill us? A little bit, but that's not the point. Well, all of a sudden, that's an entirely different experience. Meanwhile, 40K, tabletop board games, same kind of thing. Hey, Frank, uh, you want to come over and try out this Warhammer thing? Well, what the heck is that? Well, you know Gears of War? Yeah, yeah, I know Gears of War. Okay, it looks a lot like that. Big chunky space dudes, and they shoot at stuff. Okay, yeah, I'll come try that. And what we're going to do is play out this battle scenario. In person, you say. Yeah, in person. Well, what do I need to bring? Well, you need to bring all kinds of stuff, but it's fun. All right? I believe, or I submit to you all, that that's what's happened. Now, that's all well and fine for the first couple of times, first few hours, right? First week or two. But then, and this is the crux of my argument, I think that the people who are coming into newer to our hobby have got a fundamentally different conception of what a game is than the people in the 80s. Because if you were born in 2000, you are 25 now, and it's possible you've never played Monopoly, you've never played Yahtzee. Why would you? You've got Star Wars Battlefront, okay? And your whole lexicon, your whole knowledge base of gaming is things like buffing and nerfing. We need a patch to fix whatever. The meta needs to change because the game will get stale if XYZ continues. The hive mind of the internet has solved this game, and so it needs to be adjusted. And then once it is adjusted, if I'm going to keep having fun, I then need to, at some level, follow that lazy river of development, or else be left behind and be the noob getting pwned, even though I've been playing for a long time. And that doesn't sound like fun. But if that is one's conception of what a game is at its core, then how can we blame them when they spend all the time now in various communities talking about what is and is not busted in 40K? Chasing the current meta, needing the rules to be written in such a way that they cannot be misinterpreted. All those things on their face sound like good ideas. Like, everybody wants the game to be balanced, everybody wants the game to be fair, everybody wants to play by the same rules and have the same understanding of them. All those things on their face sound great. However, we are physically pushing little plastic soldiers around a fairly large table, around, model buildings, around, through craters. Maybe you're somebody really fancy that puts the gravel and everything out, right? This is not the most exacting set of tools to be doing this with. But then we get into this thing that the parts that can be exacting, we want them to be exacting. I say we, I kind of don't care. Because if you go play some other games, older games, you sort of just have to decide again with your opponent, how does this work? How do you think this works? Okay, that makes sense to me. It makes sense to you. That's how we'll play it. And that's how we'll teach it to the rest of our community that we may cultivate. And if some governing body or whatever says, "Hey, that's not how you do it," then okay, I guess either we'll do it their way or we'll keep doing it our way because those two things are never going to interact. And I understand we got all sorts of tournament circuits of 40K, so this stuff does need to be codified. But my question is, and what I want to pose for you all to consider is, are our tabletop miniature war games, specifically the ones that get a lot of touches, a lot of balanced touches, 40K, Age of Sigmar, etc., are they better for this? Or could it be that the whole conception of what a game is has been lost just because we call them all games? We call football a game, and they say they're going to try it out soon of electronically spotting the ball, but football is a game, and it's a very, very serious game. People can die playing it. And yet, when it's time to decide where exactly the ball is supposed to be spotted for the next play, a guy runs out with his hand up from 25 yards away and says, "I say there." And we're mostly okay with that. And then when we're not okay with that, we get many, many wasted minutes of reviews. Let's look at the replay. Let's look again. Let's send it to New York. Is the game better in the pursuit of being right? In the case of football, I think not. I find it difficult to watch these days because it is so stopping and starting. Is 40K better for having such an exhaustive FAQ, rules commentary, so many pieces of clarification for every single possible interaction, that we can stand around for an additional 30 minutes possibly just trying to find where it is that it talks about some little minutia that will not often make much of a difference compared to something like, say, I don't know, have you ever failed 3 out of 5 charges? Because whether or not I've messed up how 3 inches of vertical climbing works is not going to make that much difference compared to missing 3 out of 5 charges. At the end of the day, it's a dice game. Now, it's a whole other discussion to talk about that it's a dice game. Maybe we shouldn't be re-rolling dice all the time and thereby flattening the averages constantly. That seems to be defeating the purpose of it being a dice game, but again, that's for another day entirely. But this concept of what the game is supposed to be, I think, is an interesting one to consider. Let's go back briefly, and maybe we'll talk about this with some people in the RPG Tavern when we have another episode about that. But the Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop RPGs are not immune to the same sort of, I think, misunderstanding. Again, the new people in the hobby, I find, tend to be the ones the most distressed about rules, about rule changes, about version changes, about what exactly the thing says and how that should, in a sort of legal vacuum, function. Older people don't seem to care. Like players that played in the 80s and early 90s, they're just like, we'll play that spell however it feels like it should probably work. Or they'll read the thing and be like, well, that's busted. We're not going to do it that way. And everybody's happy. But you can find online discourse about how all of D&D 2024 edition is broken because of XYZ. And that's ridiculous, obviously. And why is it ridiculous? Well, it's because it's not a competitive thing. It's a communal storytelling thing. The Dungeon Master is not actually against you. The idea should be that they are cultivating a challenging experience, a rewarding experience for the player characters to go through. And it's rewarding to the dungeon master too that, oh look, they solved all my puzzles. I got to tell the story I wanted to tell. We had emotional moments. There were some harrowing combats, yada yada yada. Because if it was just dungeon master versus players, well, I'm dungeon master all the time. There's all kinds of dragons that I could just spawn out of nowhere because the dungeon master can just say that's what happened. And yet we have so much discourse and discussion about character classes, which ones are good, which ones are bad, spells, which ones are good, which ones are bad, tier lists, which ones are good, which ones are bad. Don't play XYZ class because it's no good and you'll just be dragging down the party. It's like that's not what any of this is for. However, I go back to why do we end up with this? And it's because I believe people's conception of what a game is has been warped by online gaming, by computer games. And specifically by computer games since massively multiplayer online games have existed. And obviously, I use that term a bit loosely here. I'm not talking about World of Warcraft, even though that's a good example because it's a game that has a huge ton of people and got patches often and had stuff buffed and nerfed. And every time they did that, it would make people insane. Round and round you go. But again, if you're somebody in your 20s or 30s, these are the type of experiences when you. It's the classic thing. If I say elephant, you imagine an elephant. Your elephant may look slightly different than another's, except when I say game, there are people that used to think Domino's, not the pizza. When I say game to someone who is 22, they think Fortnite. And that's okay. To close here, I want to pitch something that I find myself talking about with regard to sports very often. NASCAR is a racing thing, okay? You run laps, round and round you go. At the end, there's a winner, and then there are season points. This is the way that it has been for a long, long time. And then at some stage, they said, we're going to have a playoff. Well, a playoff to find an individual champion makes a lot of sense in the case of tennis, in the case of basketball, in the case of football and hockey, team sports, things where you can run it back tomorrow and get some sort of, best of 5, best of 7 series even. Those kind of things. Even a single elimination situation like football is a valid way to make a bracket and decide stuff. Deciding who the best driver is in NASCAR with a playoff doesn't make quite as much sense because sometimes you are involved in a wreck that has nothing to do with you. Or sometimes your car breaks that has nothing to do with you. And now you're out of the playoff. Sorry, too bad. Which is why season-long points have always been the way that racing cars has been decided, because there is bad luck that can happen that is not representative of the driver or even necessarily the car's ability. And therefore, we never did it that way. However, there's a desire to make everything football because football's the biggest, most popular, and they've got a playoff, so everything needs a playoff. To which and then golf. Golf has a playoff. The variance in performance in golf is again such that that is not a way that anybody with a sober, sensible mind would think to decide who is the best golfer. It's an impractical measuring device to say, all right, here we go. We're going to make a bracket and it's just going to whittle down until there's nobody left. It's like, well, the best golfer in the world can have a bad weekend and everybody knows he's better than Jim Bob, who got hot that day. Like, but they want to make everything football. if you've lost track of my analogy here, 40K does not need to be Call of Duty or World of Warcraft. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't need to be Call of Duty or World of Warcraft. Golf doesn't need to be football. You know why golf doesn't need to be football? Because golf is golf. NASCAR is NASCAR. Football is football, and you can love it all you want. Call of Duty is Call of Duty, and you can love it all you want the way that it is so viciously competitive, and that's what it's for. But when you have the opportunity to get out of the basement, come outside, the homie Craig literally played outside last week. Check out his pictures in our Discord of the Sweat Your Balls Off Summer Invitational that happened in Craig's yard. It was not the day to do it, but he did it. 3,000 points worth. There's got to be some Bindi swords and wings in some of those armies, I swear. It was too hot. Too hot. 40K doesn't have to be Call of Duty. It doesn't have to be StarCraft. And that, I think, should be perfectly okay. So, I want to ask in closing for everybody to look inward and think to yourself, when you think game, what baggage are you bringing to a game? And I think that a lot of people, because I'm guilty of this too, I think a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, when I think game, I think of Battlefield or whatever. Something that would not make for the greatest time if you had to do it in person. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know what you think about the solo show. I was skeptical whether or not I could talk for 42 uninterrupted minutes, but it's been fine. I'm sure that will come to no shock to my lovely wife, who's probably had to listen to this. And until next time, don't forget to stay fanatical.